Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a really powerful idea from a text by Leslie Terabesi. It explores a fundamental tension inside Islam, a conflict between the original revealed scripture and the centuries of tradition and politics that have grown up around it.
Okay, so the text kicks things off with this verse right here. And the key words are wisdom and beautiful preaching. See, this isn't a call for force. It's about persuasion, about debate. This is the peaceful starting point from which the author argues things really began to change. And, that immediately makes you wonder, if the whole foundation is beautiful preaching, then how on earth do you get to a place where religion is used to justify power grabs and aggression? To answer that, the author lays out a very specific framework. Okay, so the author's whole argument really boils down to this one key idea. You can't understand the conflicts within Islam if you think of it as just one thing. You have to see it as three distinct versions.
And here they are. You've got what the author calls Quranic Islam. That's the original. But then you get these two other forms that, according to the text, stray from that path. And this is the absolute core of the argument that both traditional Islam and Islamism are, to use the author's word, aberrations, major departures from that original revelation, pulling the faith in totally different directions. All right, let's zoom in on that third one, the agitator. To really show what Islamism looks like on the ground, the source points to a case study you've probably heard of, the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, what's really important here, and the source makes this crystal clear, is that this isn't just criticism coming from the outside. As you can see, we're talking about major Islamic nations like Saudi Arabia and Egypt, which have officially labeled the group a terrorist organization, with the kingdom's top religious council confirming it as recently as 2020. So why the label? Well, the accusations are all about politics. It's about sedition, destabilization, grabbing power. The main charge from these religious authorities is that the Brotherhood isn't really a religious movement at all. It's just wearing religion like a mask to hide its true goals. And then the text makes an even more, shall we say, explosive historical claim. It alleges that the Brotherhood's founder, Hassan al-Banna, was such a fan of Hitler's rise to power that he actually had Mein Kampf translated into Arabic and renamed it My Jihad. And that's not where the thread ends. The source points to another key figure, Hajj Amin al-Husseini. By calling him the father of Arab terrorism and linking him all the way back to the Armenian genocide, the author is basically building a case that political violence wasn't something that happened later. It was baked into the movement's DNA from the get-go. And this kind of thinking, the source argues, leads right to the justifications we hear for modern terrorism. I mean, look at this quote from the Brotherhood's late spiritual leader, Yusuf al-Qaradawi. He's openly praising suicide bombers, calling them human bombs, like they're just another legitimate weapon of war. But, and this is super important, the source is careful to show that this is not the only Islamic viewpoint, not by a long shot. It presents this incredible clash of ideas. You have al-Qaradawi on one side, celebrating martyrdom, and on the other, the theologian Muhammad Sharur, who says these acts are completely alien to a religion of life, not of death. It just goes to show you the deep, internal battle for the very soul of the faith. Okay, so if you've got these completely opposite interpretations, how did we even get here? The text argues that to find the real root cause of groups like the Muslim Brotherhood, you have to rewind the clock way back to a single fundamental split, the moment the faith's focus shifted from the Quran to human tradition. The author lays out this break over a couple of centuries. It starts with the Prophet himself, who apparently said, "Don't write down my sayings," because he wanted the Quran to be the one and only scripture. But then, look what happens. Just a century later, that starts to change. Caliphs start collecting these sayings, the Hadith. Fast forward to the 800s, and this collection gets promoted to the level of a dual revelation. And the end result, the author claims, is that the original scripture, the Quran, kind of got pushed to the side. And his concept al-wahyain, or dual revelation, that's the theological engine that drove this entire change. Think about it like this. Imagine if 200 years after the U.S. Constitution was written, someone found a bunch of letters from the Founding Fathers and suddenly said, hey, these have the same legal power as the Constitution itself. That's the scale of the change the author is talking about. It created a whole second source of divine law. And according to the source, this one hadith, this one saying, became the justification for that whole new system. That little phrase, something else equal to it, was taken to mean the Prophet's traditions were just as important as the Quran. The author calls this a tragedy because in one move it knocked the Quran off its pedestal as the sole supreme source. All right, so what happens when you've suddenly got two competing rulebooks? According to the text, this shift had absolutely devastating consequences, especially for intellectual freedom and the place of reason in Islam. What you got was this massive intellectual showdown. On one side, you had the people of reason, who were like, we should use logic and our brains to interpret the Quran. And on the other side, you had the people of hadith, who insisted on just following tradition word for word, no questions asked. It was a battle for the soul of Islamic thought, and as the source tells it, the traditionalists won, big time. And that victory of tradition over reason had some, well, pretty brutal consequences, according to the source. Islamic law, now leaning heavily on hadith, started to approve of extreme punishments. I mean, for missing a prayer, not just a spiritual slap on the wrist, but death, in cold blood by the sword. And this way of thinking wasn't just for common people. It went right to the top. The infamous Ottoman law of fratricide, which led to the murder of dozens of royals, even babies, was justified using this new tradition-first legal system. For the author, this is the ultimate evidence of just how far the religion had drifted from its Quranic origin. So, after painting this really grim picture of distortion and what the text calls a crisis of thought, it doesn't just leave us there in despair. No, it pivots and offers up a pretty radical call for reform, a way forward. And that path forward really comes down to a choice between two powerful opposing ideas. You've got taqlid, basically blind imitation of the past, a practice the author literally calls a cancer on the Muslim mind. And then you have the proposed cure, bringing back ijtihad, which is all about independent critical thinking. So the author's solution is, well, it's nothing short of a complete overhaul. It's a call to re-examine everything. Revive critical thinking, clean out superstition from education, and, this is the big one, put the Quran back in its place as the one and only source of divine law. It's all about trying to get back to that original worldview. In this slide, really, it captures the powerful, central question of the entire text. It leaves us with this huge thought to chew on. Can that original worldview, as the author defines it, actually be recovered after centuries of being buried under tradition and politics? Or is the weight of all that history just too heavy to move?